Hey guys, so today you and I are going to talk about cleaning things up. So let's get into it. So the question in question was, Frederick, is cleaning up messy code one of the most satisfying feelings for a software engineer? Well, yeah, for some developers that I've worked with, at the very least. Usually, I'd like to say that the most satisfying feeling for software engineers, on average, is to get to scratch their mental itch. It's not working on like a specific project or uh, being paid the most, etc., etc. All of these sorts of things are secondary to getting to scratch the mental itch. And that can, for some, be to refactor all the things, and for some people it can be rewriting a system in a better way, or it can be to get to work in a certain way, like a certain style of doing things, because practically all the software developers have these sorts of needs, or have, well, most of them at the very least, they have this need to align things in the way they see fit. And that's very abstract, but in a sense you can think of it as a light OCD type of thing, right? Where so I've worked with software developers who need need to do code reviews in a certain way, and some of them need to have certain naming conventions or things like that that will actually affect their mood if they can't do things in a certain way and so forth. And then you, of course, you have the software developers who don't really express much an opinion about anything, but even they have something that they really, really need to do. And this is it's a tricky thing, because if you the thing that I usually say is that the sign of true maturity for the like when it comes to seniority and so forth, comes when you start to see the people who can identify things that you have to do, or things that will make a difference, and things that are just about you. And that is very common that you see in the mid-level range of software developers, where, and even in the juniors, where they have a desire to see things work in a certain way, or they want to use a specific paradigm of working, etc., etc. They have all these opinions about how to do things, quote unquote, the correct way, and it emotionally gets to them. If as I said, it's very important to them, but it's less so about producing good results for the whole. A classic one is, as you'd said, like rewriting or cleaning up messy code. And then, if this is usually not something the companies can do, but this is something that an experienced tech lead or someone who is sort of involved in the work can do. And that is to ask the fundamental question: what is going to change if you do this thing? How is this going to improve anything? There are many times I've seen like developers waste tons of time, like enormous amounts of time, on something that does not produce any change whatsoever. It's just about their mental satisfaction, renaming styles, or like structuring files in a slightly different way, etc., etc. It has nothing to do whatsoever with how well the code is working or the comprehension to anybody else. It has to do with that they want things to be nice and tidy, if that makes sense. It's neat freakishness, right? And to a certain degree, you want software developers to feel empowered to make their own decisions, as we like to say. That's almost, you can almost look that up, because that is the popular term these days. But the argument that I present is that as I've said before, I don't believe in this. It depends on how you define it, but the leading through servitude ideas and so forth. I think that these are notions that should guide the people who are supposed to know which steps to take, like the leaders of the groups. This should guide their way of making decisions and include people and make sure that they understand the people that work with them in order to make good decisions. But I think that when you get to a point where you're basically just allowing anybody to do whatever they want, really bad shit starts happening. And I see it all the time, where it becomes a question of who has the strongest opinion among the software developers. And if they all have strong opinions, you can actually see a lot of rivalry and friction erupt. And the problem with having the strongest opinion is that that's not necessarily the best opinion. If you take a look at the world stage and politics and things like that, yes, you can probably relate to what I'm saying. It's not always the smartest person or the most appropriate person who is leading things. And when that happens in code, you are left with people rewriting entire code bases into a new language. They're betting on languages that they just think are cool or like just want to try out without any type of long-term ideas or anything like that. In a sense, it's like, as I've said before, it's like children in a candy store. You've let them loose, like they're gonna do, like you're not gonna gain much from it. Most likely, it's more likely that it's gonna cost you long term in comparison to how you could have simplified things, etc., etc. Then it is going to net you something, and so that balance comes back to, as I've said, do you actually have people in the company who understand the difference between making a good, worthwhile investment that will satisfy the software developers, that will make them sort of actually create value for the company that is lasting in some way, and when they're basically dealing with an individual who has a lot of ideas and opinions about things that actually will only be down to what they prefer and very little else. And that is a very, very key thing for you to get something from your software developers. This is the most key observation that you can make as a technical leader or anything like that, because the reality is that most of the software developers are not so concerned with whether or not they're always doing what's best for the company or things like that. They are most concerned about their area, their code, like the thing that they are doing. And it's similar to if you look at construction workers and stuff like that. If the construction workers get to do whatever they want, they're going to simply focus on whatever they are doing within their area of like the building. But they may not be so concerned over how well the entire structure and like everything is cost effective and like all of the other things that needs to happen in order to actually produce the end result. So what I want you to take away from this is that yes, for a lot of software developers it's satisfying to clean up messy code, but I would say it's bigger than that. For most software developers it's all about satisfying their own mental gremlins. They usually have everything from a perfect paradigm to a favorite library to a certain way of doing pull requests or rules that everybody quote unquote should follow, etc., etc., to some degree or another usually. And these things are important to them, and I argue that is the thing that a lot of them get a lot of satisfaction from dealing with. As an organization and as a team leader or something like that, you need to understand that if you adopt this idea that they can do whatever they want, they will do whatever they want. And in many cases, you are betting, as I like to say, you're basically, it's like a slot machine. You're betting and hoping on chance that you've found a perfect combination of people who will be responsible with the balancing act between doing what's good for like what they just kind of want to do and what's going to be a net gain for the company. And if you don't have those people, they will actually just waste quite a lot of time on doing things that they will always tell you is important or things that they want to do, etc., etc. But as I've said before, if you have no idea of how to evaluate what's actually important and what's just about them and sort of the cool things they want to try out because they can, because why not, it's very difficult for you to get a sustainable, well-working team. Because long-term, guys, I've had many conversations with software developers where like they want to refactor things, and I go, and the second the next person comes along who doesn't share your opinion, when we hand this over to the next team, they're also going to do the same thing. So this, like, some refactors, guys, you could be refactoring forever and nothing is going to change. And the quicker you can come to a realization that in some cases it's better for you to understand that this thing is not so important and this other thing is more important, this lasting change, that observation and knowing when that is the case is a very key element as to being an effective team lead for a software team. Have a great day.